Hey, everyone.
Hello, welcome to the next meeting of the Springfield City Morgue Fan Club. You stab them, we slab them. This is 8 Ball.
I'm not in Springfield anymore, man.
That's right, never mind.
But I'm still a fan.
The Greater Ozarks Morgue.
The Greater Ozarks Moors. You know what? I'm south of you. You just put them, you just like lube them up and slide them on down to me.
Oh my god. My eyes.
More like their ass, man. It'd be all chapped by the time it got to me.
Oh no. Is that assless chaps or a chapless ass?
I don't even think you want to know anymore. All right,
without further ado, welcome back to History of Hollywood.
And other strange things. Kyle, what are we talking about today?
Dr. Strangelove, the Stanley Kubrick movie from 1964.
Dr. Strangelove, or How I Stopped Worrying and Loved the Bomb. No, that's not right.
How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb?
Is that right? How I
Learned? So. How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
There we go.
Boom,
yes, sir.
Baby.
Yes, sir. Very good.
Which honestly is probably a better title because Dr. Strangelove is barely in the movie called Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, but my goodness, does he kill it, man?
He does brings a certain je ne sais quoi of absurdity to the movie.
Let's get right to it, man. So 1964, this was nominated for 4 Oscars.
Ooh.
How many did it win?
0.
Didn't win any. My Fair Lady actually won Best Picture that year.
Gross.
Also, interesting enough, at the same time, at this point in time, there were split categories for certain categories were split, to where you had black and white and you had color. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. You know,
I see.
Probably a very short period of time where that was a thing. I don't know if anyone remembers back to our first couple episodes, but our first 2 were Gladiator and Braveheart. And they're both on IMDb's top 100 rated movies of all time. And this is also on that same list. This is number 72.
Look at us.
IMDb's top 100 movies. It has an 8.4. It has a 98% critic rating and 94% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
As it should.
Yes, sir.
As it should.
So, getting into it, man, there is one actor in here that plays 3 different parts.
Yeah, he's the British officer, the president, and Dr. Strangelove, right?
Yes, and they're all 3 so very different.
And you cannot tell, like in the movie.
I did not know. I didn't know until I watched the trailer. Which, if you have not, first off, let's preface this. If you've not watched this movie,
please do.
Honestly, listening to this podcast is not going to do it justice, because this movie is hilarious and it's all subtle. But
in a very like niche sort. It's like trying to tell you why "Oh Brother Where Art Thou" was hilarious. Like you can't really speak it; you just have to watch it.
You have to experience it. Okay, you have to be there. It's just So if you haven't seen it, please come back and listen to it, because I feel like we have a lot of good things we can say about it, but we can't do justice to this, man. You got to watch the movie. But before you watch the movie, or after you watch the movie, or if you've seen it, stop this podcast and go watch the trailer, because the trailer for this movie is hilarious as well, and it's one of the most 60s things you will ever see in your life. It's just.
Quite frankly, this movie is one of the most 1960s things you're ever going to see in your life. So, circle fits the square.
That is also true. Okay, so this is a little movie about the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 1964. I'm assuming in this, it takes place in the modern day. It takes place in 1964.
Yeah, probably.
Kyle, what's going on in the real world at this time?
That's a really good question, because currently in 1964, the world is in the 4th stage of the Cold War.
4th stage.
Yes, the 4th stage.
Right.
That goes from roughly 1962 to 1979.
That's a long stage.
It is. Yeah, I think it's the longest stage, but it's the most stereotypical Cold War stage. That, like, when you think Cold War, this is what you're thinking about. You're thinking about Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK being assassinated, civil rights movement, Vietnam, African insertions by the Soviet Union and by the U.S. You know, so Eastern Bloc being run over by Soviet tanks. Like this is like the nougat of the Cold War chocolate, so to speak. Like this is the Cold War is now happening.
Is this the most prevalent time in American culture?
I don't know about most prevalent. This is definitely like when American culture becomes like imposed against the rest of the world, for sure. Because this is where the Soviet Union now has its own geopolitical culture as well. And Eastern Europe has its own Soviet aligned culture. And China has now developed a global culture, though it's new. So this is where like Western culture becomes super duper duper like counter to everything else.
I feel like, and this is just me spitballing here, I feel like in our very divided time, this is when things, depending if you stand on one side, this is when you think things started to fall apart, and if you stand on the other side, this is when you think things began to change for the better.
Yeah,
this decade.
Yeah, this is also the decade where people are more or less legitimately concerned about the entire world ending via nuclear apocalypse. I mean, they weren't not worried about it in the 50s, but this is the period where ICBMs start to become the norm instead of like experimental. This is the period where China now has nukes, and as far as Americans are concerned, China and the USSR are the same freaking country. They're not. More on that later, probably, or not. I don't know. It depends on how deep we get into this. But yeah, this is the period in time where everybody is scared of the Soviet Union, and everybody in the Soviet Union is scared of the United States and NATO, and everybody's just waiting for that one moron to hit the red button and the whole world to go up in a mushroom cloud.
It's interesting you say that because, okay, obviously I'm not the history guy here. I'm the movie guy. So from the culture and the movies at the time, the 50s is the atomic age. You have, and we talked about doing, before we decided on Dr. Strangelove, we talked about doing like a monster movie to where it was very popular at the time for like alien invasions and nuclear tests gone wrong, making, you know, things like Godzilla and them and Tarantula and things like that. Like you had these monsters at the time, and it was kind of, they're campy, they're cheesy, they're fun. And it's almost like, oh, we're scared of the Soviets, haha. And then like the 60s come around and you're like, the world
we
might
are
actually
scared
end.
of the Soviets.
Like, the culture changes to where it's the same enemy, but like it's serious now. And
yeah.
And I think it's interesting that you said like this is when you're actually concerned about the world ending, because when looking back, like in the films, that's more of the 50s, but in reality, yeah, that would be more of like the 60s era.
Yeah, and the ironic thing is that this phase of the Cold War also goes all the way through this thing called détente, which is Jimmy Carter at the very end of it, and Nixon especially working with Leonid Brezhnev, the head of the Soviet Union, to like de-escalate the conflict.
Right.
Because after Vietnam, the U.S. is like, this is going to kill us both. Like, we can't keep doing this, threaten each other, proxy war stuff. Like, it doesn't help anybody. And so the U.S. and Russia both come to the table, and they talk about the ludicrousy of mutually assured destruction that was the policy in the 60s and the early 70s, and they kind of walk it back. And then Reagan restarts it, but that's a conversation for a different time.
But then he tore down that wall.
Yep. All by himself.
All by himself. He was out there with that hammer knocking it away.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Says it is stated the position of the U.S. Air Force that their safeguards would prevent the occurrence of such events as depicted in the film.
No B-52 bombers were harmed in the making of this movie.
Right. Furthermore, it should be noted that none of the characters portrayed in this film are meant to represent any real persons living or dead. I like to think, because the tension is so high at the time, and I mean, you're really starting to see the divide in the country. Man, this is kind of a ballsy movie to make. This is really poking. This is poking fun of your own government. I would argue more than the Soviet government.
Honestly, the Soviets are the ones in my mind who come off as like, rational is not the right word, but the most easy to follow thought process, like, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, but, like they're definitely portrayed as kind of lackadaisical Yeah, I don't know if I said that word right.
Irresponsibly rational, I think, is the way the Soviets are portrayed in this movie.
Yeah.
In the sense that they're just like, the whole world will just blow up then. Like, that's what it was all going to come to anyway.
Right. The premier is drunk the entire time. And we never see him. He's just like on its phone, like he's talking to.
We don't even hear him. We
no,
just hear the other ends of the conversation.
Okay, in the first scene with dialogue, General Ripper is concerned with his voice being recognized before stating the immediate action orders.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is interesting. No, like his ego is first before, like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna start the next World War. Do you recognize my voice? Do you recognize? And like, it sets the tone perfectly for the joke is not right in your face, but if you watch it through the right lens, everything makes sense perfectly throughout this film. To spell it out for you, a general has gone rogue, kind of gone insane. He has a conspiracy. We'll get to it later, but he has sent out the orders to all of these bomber planes to attack their targets in Soviet Russia.
And the order is a last resort order, and so they all believe that the United States has suffered a nuclear attack, and that they are the pilots believe that the United States has been nuked, and that they are now the response to the U.S. being nuked.
Right. They are the counterattack. Okay, let's talk about Slim Pickens. He's going to be our pilot here. Slim Pickens is a very interesting fellow, and I was actually reading up about him a little bit ago. He was actually, he's a World War II veteran. He was a rodeo clown, like a legitimate rodeo clown, who got into the business by being like a stuntman, falling off of horses.
That's amazing.
And then ended up getting acting roles later on.
So when I fall off a horse, it's a mistake. When he falls off a horse, he gets paid for it.
He gets paid for it.
That seems wrong somehow.
Very interesting fella. But yeah, the type, man, I couldn't imagine a Slim Pickens of modern day, because he's just this goofy, lovable dude. He's in this. He's in probably the most well-known movie he's in is Blazing Saddles.
Maybe our Slim Pickens is Paul Rudd. Like, hear me out. They're not at all personality-wise similar, but just the goofy guy who always makes you vaguely laugh at everything he's in. Paul Rudd.
An argument could be made. He's a heck of a fella, or a heck of a character in this. So he's going to take off his pilot helmet and replace it with a cowboy hat. And his attitude changes completely from, this can't be right. There's no way this is right. Guys, calm down. There's a mistake. To, all right, boys, we're leading the charge. All right.
Time to nuke some people. Let's go.
Strap up the guns. We're going in. That's where they're going to be the entire time, is they're going to go to Soviet Russia and they're going to bomb their target.
And for those of you who need to know, which is everybody, one of the crewmen is none other than Darth Vader himself.
Oh, yeah. James Earl Jones.
In his first movie role.
Yeah, I saw him and I was like, I know that guy. It's funny. I recognized him from Conan the Barbarian. And then I was like, oh, he's also Darth Vader.
I hate you so much. So much. Not even Field of Dreams. You recognized him from Conan the Barbarian.
Conan the Barbarian, man.
Not even The Sandlot. Not even Mufasa. Oh, my heart.
Well, I'm an Arnold fan. What are you gonna say?
That's anyway.
Moving on.
Moving on.
So the communication between these two high-ranking officials in the U.S. government is relayed by a half-naked secretary.
As it should be.
As it should be. What else are you gonna do? We're introduced to
Buck Turkidson.
And I swear I've seen him in something else, but I looked through his filmography and I can't find it. He seems so familiar.
I know what you mean, but I cannot for the life of me think of anything that I've actually seen.
Does someone imitate him? He's got such... Every time he's on screen, it's hard to look at anything else. Him and Dr. Strangelove, those two characters are just impossible to look away from. They are... I mean, they steal the screen every time they're on. They do so well. It's the little mannerisms. It's the little things that they do, the little emphasis they put on everything they say. It's incredible. It's just one of those screen presence things that you can't, I don't know if you can teach, but it's something that I feel like is really lost in modern movies because they don't just place the camera still and let the actors, perform. Everything is script, I'm sounding like an old man here. I'm not trying to.
No, No, I know what you mean. I think the rise of green screen like did a lot of good for films, but it also kind of took away from like the ludicrousy of being on this giant, overly developed set that you can feed off of. Like as an incredibly amateur actor myself, you're not able to reach your full potential until you have the set and you're in your costume. And so if the set is taken away, then it's kind of hard to reach the level of absurdity that is in this movie because you're in it.
It's like there's a level of theatrics in older movies that aren't in modern movies.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, moving on. So General Ripper is arming his base. He says, "Trust no one, shoot first, ask questions later, listen only to me."
USA, baby.
Yeah. So he's given the orders that the Russians have invaded. He's telling his own members of his base here and they are in the United States.
And they're in U.S. uniforms, and they're using United States weapons.
Yeah, and he says that if they come after you, they're Russians pretending to be United States. Even if they seem familiar, shoot them at 200 yards out. Don't let them get any closer.
Don't let them get close enough to see him or talk to him.
The code that they send is OPE, which I thought was hilarious. Yeah, so he's armed his base. He has an M60 that he is ready to use.
Actually, it's even funnier. It's an M1919.
It's a Browning.
It's a Browning M1919.
Yeah.
So it's a World War II air-cooled machine gun that he had in his golf bag that he just yanks out.
Mandrake, come hold this. Come hold this belt. Mandrake is one of the other Peter Sellers roles. He is a British. What is he? Like a British officer?
He's a British colonel,
right?
I believe. But he's basically like a foreign arms liaison, you know? Because Britain and the U.S. are thick as thieves during the Cold War, and so there are American soldiers that observe the British military. There are British soldiers that observe the U.S. military.
So we're just kind of hanging out together.
Yeah, you know.
You know, some of us are drinking whiskey, some of us are drinking tea.
Some of us are wondering why we have a machine gun in our golf bag, and the others are worried about the fluoridation of the water supply.
And some of us are trying to get the code that can recall
the freaking atomic strike. Man, this sounds like a bad joke. There's a British guy and an American guy standing at a military base. One of them has launched a nuclear strike, and the other one's trying to recall it. Who is who?
Yeah. You might go, and you go, it's 1964, and you go, okay, never mind.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay, General Ripper's going to explain why he's doing the things that he's doing.
And basically, it comes down to it that he's freaking lost his mind. He's off his nut. The man is whack.
Yeah, so Ripper consoles with Mandrake. He says the commies never drink water. Fluoridation of water. Ripper uses statement. Fluoridation of water, which I thought was hilarious because, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a modern conspiracy still.
It is. So it's been going on since the 40s, and it's literally just to protect your teeth and help keep water clean. Like that's what it is. There's no real proven long-term effects of fluoridation of water, and people are like, it's a conspiracy. It turns frogs gay.
That's okay. That's what I was gonna ask. Is this the fraud gay one?
Yeah,
the gay
it's the
fraud one.
Yeah, it's the gay fraud one.
I got you. Okay, perfect. All right. So it turned the frogs gay, and so we're gonna nuke them as a result.
Commies never drink water.
Commies never drink water. And he's talking about fluids. Like he's clearly off his rocker, but I thought that specific line, I was like, that's kind of funny. I wonder if you brought some of these modern issues to somebody from 1960. And they're like, is this a movie? Is this real? They probably wouldn't know. They wouldn't have any idea.
Jack Ripper would be a flat earther. I promise you. Like, he just...
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the end of the world, Mandrake? No? You want to know why? Because you fall off of
it. So the U.S. soldiers are fighting. They're trying to get into the base to get the recall codes.
Well, to force General Ripper to give them the recall codes.
Right.
They have been ordered by the president. Like, they have been handpicked and sent by the president of the United States.
Which they say, like, is a failsafe in case the president and a bunch of other people are killed. There's still someone who can send this code.
And so poor Mandrake, in the middle of having to try to like talk sense into this crazy guy, is also forced to belt feed the 30 caliber machine gun that General Ripper's been packing in his golf bag as he blind fires out the window at the American soldier.
Right. And when I was watching this, I was really wondering, I was like, is Mandrake gonna turn into the same as Ripper? I was like, is that the storyline they're gonna go with? But anyways, he doesn't. But the US soldiers are fighting, and the sign "Peace is our profession" is in the background. Ripper is going to finish his theory here.
This little monologue.
The soldiers are going to surrender. The soldiers of the base are.
Yeah.
So Ripper is by himself. Everyone else realizes it was a big ruse. He's still convinced that it is, in fact, the Russians outside. And so Ripper's going to walk into a bathroom and shoot himself.
After wrapping a towel around his neck for reasons we're not really sure why.
Oh, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, you know?
But there is a gunshot. What would be the reason for that?
Fluoridation of the water supply, man. I don't know what to tell you.
To absorb
his
fluids, dude.
His fluids.
He's
precious
protecting
bodily
his fluids. He won't let those commie bastards get his bodily fluids.
Commies never drink water, but they drink blood.
They might. Now that we figured that one out. Mandrake thinks he's figured out the code.
Yes, he has like a whole cross sheet because it's purity of essence is what Ripper keeps babbling about.
Right.
And so Mandrake is like, POE, EOP, EPO. This has to be something here has to be the 3-letter code. And he finds it right as this American sergeant kicks in the door and immediately accuses him of not only being an instigator of nuclear war, but also of killing this man who's just dead in the bathroom.
That he just, you shot him. You shot Ripper.
And accuses him of being gay all in one fell swoop.
And then it's hilariously, Mandrake is going to try to place a call with the president
to
solve all of this.
Because all of the phone lines have been shot away.
But he has a payphone that goes through, but he can't use it because he doesn't have enough change. And the United States, the White House won't collect the call. And then he goes, and he tells the general or the other soldier that's behind him. He tells him, "There's a Coke machine right there. Can you please shoot it out and we can get the coins out of it?"
And he goes, "That's private property. I can't shoot that.
Private property, can't do that." And he goes, "If you're wrong about this, you're gonna have to explain this to Coca-Cola."
He puts like 8 bullets in it.
The world is at stake, and he's worried about change in a Coke machine.
Or when he's trying to explain to the guy that there's atomic warfare, he's like, "I don't know anything about that. Here's what I know. I was told to go to the base to get General Ripper on the phone, and General Ripper's dead because you shot him, you and your pre-versions." And Mandrake's like,
Pre-version. Yeah,
the world is going to end.
He mispronounces perversion every time.
I think there were some pre-versions happening in here. And then he tells him to not try any pre-versions in the phone booth.
Man, we said it at the beginning, man. It's the subtle things that just make this movie hilarious.
Just watch it. Just do yourself a favor.
All right, we're gonna back up. Let's
go back all the way up to the beginning for plot 2, the war room.
The war room. Okay, so who's in the war room? A bunch of people, but essentially we have the president.
A weirdly high amount of people are in the war room.
Yeah, and they all have phones. They're all listening.
And the first notable thing that happens in the war room is in the middle of the very important discussion about these planes that have gone rogue. Buck Turkinson's side piece, his secretary, calls him, and he's like, "How'd you get this number? I told you never to call me here. I'm in the war room."
No, it's not just physical. What do you mean just physical?
And it's also a funny part of this movie is you never hear the other side of any phone call ever. So you get the entire phone conversation vis-a-vis the person you're watching on screen. Which
makes me wonder, is it his wife calling?
Well, no, because he says, I'm going to make you the Mrs. Buck Turkinson. So it's the secretary who's calling him. But he's in the middle of talking about the end of the world. And based off the conversation, she's accusing him of not caring about her and blowing her off for work. And he's like, no, of course it's not just physical. I'm very emotionally connected with you. I love and respect you as a human. I'm going to make you the next Mrs. Buck Turkinson. I need you to hang up the phone now.
I mean, it might be the most realistic part of the movie.
It's close. It's either that or the Russian premier being drunk because it's like 3 a.m. Russian time, and why wouldn't he be?
Exactly. Yeah. He's at the top of the food chain, man.
Dude.
What is he gonna do? You gotta live it up.
At the top.
Um. Okay, so the president invites the Russian ambassador into the war room. Tardisan
yes.
does not go for that.
Ambassador Desadsky.
And so they're instantly going to break out into a brawl. And then my favorite line of the movie, gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
This is unprecedented. I've never seen such violent behavior in the war room.
I love how the president describes to the Russian premier what he did. He went and did a silly thing.
Dmitri, are you hearing me? Good. Yes, I'm hearing you just fine, Dmitri.
Yeah,
are
good.
you hearing
I'm
me?
good. Yes,
Oh,
very good. I'm glad
so
we're both good.
So we're hearing each other. Everything is clear. Well, we have a general who did a silly thing, Dmitri.
He went and did a silly thing. So the president is prepared to help the Russians shoot down the bomber planes.
I feel like we should bring up that the drunk Russian premier, vis-a-vis the president's conversation, accuses it of being an attack, and the president is like, Dmitri, if it was on purpose, you probably wouldn't be getting this phone call.
Which he's right. He's right.
Yeah, like
yeah. So Tardisan is going to he's going to kind of instigate the whole thing.
That you should start the nuclear war. Like, why not, right?
They should go ahead and launch all of the other nukes. And he describes it as only modest and acceptable civilian casualties.
Yeah, only 10 to 20 million.
10 to
max.
20 million. 10 to 20 million.
Max.
So, and then he also, man, I'm telling you, this is just so full of such great lines. Tardisan also, he says he's being reprimanded for a single slip up.
It's also funny where the president's like, wait, how is this possible? I didn't give this order. And he goes, well, you see, Mr. President, we implemented a policy where if you were killed, we wouldn't need you to give an order. But everybody is supposed to have to verify that the chain of command is God. And the president goes, so how's that working for you? And he goes, I mean, granted, the human element failed us this time, but I don't think we should just throw away an entire security protocol because of one crazy guy.
Because of one slip up.
Because of one slip up, as you're watching like 36 B-52 bombers descend upon the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And then we're going to be introduced to Dr. Strangelove. He's head of weapons. Very thick German accent. He has a black glove on his right hand, which seems to be controlled by some other entity besides his own brain. Which I think is hilarious.
When he's smoking a cigarette and his right hand gets stuck holding it in front of his face, so every time he wants to take the cigarette out of his mouth, he has to use his left hand and pull it out and then put it back through his finger.
Yeah, the right hand he's just fighting with his right hand the entire time. And at one point he's going to do the Nazi salute and then forefully shove his right hand back down.
He also calls the president Mein Führer like every time he talks to him.
Yeah. So a little heavy-handed with the symbolism here, but we all get the idea of what they're going for.
The U.S. hired hardcore Nazi rocket scientists as part of their atomic program. If you didn't know, now you know.
Right.
Not the best look.
Which was legitimate to an extent, correct?
Yeah, so it was legitimate in the sense that, like, the Russians didn't hire them. The Russians just forced them to work for them. And the reason we hired Nazis is because prior to the end of World War II, the only nation on Earth with guidable rocket technology at all is Nazi Germany.
Right.
So if you want to stick a nuke on the end of a rocket and have it hit what you want, there's only so many people in the world who know how to do that. And all of them are German. And most of them are Nazis in name, if not in like actual belief. So you dealt with the devil. You hired Nazis to build your rocket program.
Okay, so Dr. Strangelove is going to kind of spell out what the doomsday device is and what it does. And essentially what it is if a nuke goes off in Soviet Russia.
And it's coated in cobalt.
Right. It's, what does he call it? Cobalt thorium G, which has a half-life of 93 years. The fallout of it would be 93 years. So it's the end of the world. It's a literal doomsday device. I don't know if this isn't where this phrase is coined from, is it?
No, there's been like references to doomsday devices pretty much as soon as atomic weaponry came out.
Gotcha. Okay, was there something similar You mentioned earlier, like having to de-escalate the situation post Vietnam.
Yeah, so there's never like an actual. Nobody ever makes a doomsday weapon. There's a bunch of theories about cobalt-tipped nukes, because theoretically speaking, yeah, you could code a bomb to where you could have the radioactive half-life sit on the ground for like 90 years. But then the question was raised, why would we do that? We're all dead anyway if we've dropped that many bombs. So nobody really did, at least not that we know. And the idea of the doomsday weapon was that, yes, in theory, you bury a bunch of hydrogen bombs of varying sizes and you trigger them to where if somebody hits a button or there's an explosion within a radius, then you all die. Nobody ever designed that either, because they thought to themselves, well, most nuclear targets are also nuclear facilities, and what happens if we have a malfunction and a missile blows up and we destroy the entire world? So, like,
not worth it.
Now, one thing that did happen, more than we would ever like to think, is that there were a lot of really close calls. So the Cuban Missile Crisis was an incredibly close call, and that one was the U.S. put atomic missiles in Turkey to strike Moscow and Stalingrad and these major USSR cities. And so Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, was like, okay, then I'm going to put missiles in Cuba. And the US was like, well, you can't do that. And he goes, I very much can. You have missiles 90 miles from my front door. I'll have missiles 90 miles from Florida. And long story short, we almost sent our Navy to fight the Soviet Navy outside of Cuba. And we only backed down when Khrushchev was like, nobody wants everybody to die. I'll move my missiles if you move your missiles. So
very interesting.
And it was close. And then during the crisis, a Russian missile detector in a ship went haywire and indicated that they were under missile attack. And one guy just put his foot down and said, I'm not pressing the nuclear button. And right before he was about to get overridden by his commanding officer, the call came down from the admiral that was like, do not hit the button. That is not a real report. Nobody is firing missiles.
Wow. How different one person's actions can make.
Oh, yeah.
You know, how much of an impact one person's actions can make.
Yep.
All right. Now, so we know the states. They do find the code. It gets sent out. All the B-52s return except for one, because it was nearly shot down by Soviet defenses, but it wasn't completely. It was damaged, but not completely taken out. And
now it's flying 150 feet above the ground below radar cover. Because
it's flying below radar cover with no communications and multiple malfunctions. But
and a 30 megaton nuclear weapon.
30, yeah. Where are we at with a 30 megaton nuke? Is that?
We've reached the point where a 30 megaton nuke's a pretty standard size nuke.
Okay.
In the 60s, because everybody has hydrogen bombs now, so it's a pretty like normal nuclear payload for a B-52.
Okay, a normal payload for an atomic bomb.
Yeah,
that's just
so,
a weird
which is
concept
a weird thing to
say.
Say, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that's the time that we are.
But it's not like anybody be like, oh my God, there's a 30 megaton bomb in there. They'd be like, yeah, there's a 30 megaton bomb in there. That and the other 32 planes we just called off.
And I love that they say, it says on the bomb, nuclear warhead, handle with care.
Yeah, just in case you forgot.
Right. Ferguson is going to make a scene over the ability of the pilots. They're like, he's like, you should see how they can fly. They can fly so low.
He's like, Ruskies can't fly.
Ruskies can't fly. Yeah, I love it. I love the slang. I love the little jabs.
I like how General Buck Turkinson is constantly forgetting like the context that is surrounding what is coming out of his mouth, because the president says, do they have a shot to get through? As in, is there a chance that the world is going to end? Turkison hears it as, can the American pilots outfly the Russian pilots? And he's like, of course they can. Like, have you ever seen these guys fly?
He gets excited.
He'll fly that big plane 50 feet above their ground, and then he like slowly processes what he's saying and just shuts up.
And he goes, they have a pretty good chance.
Do they have a chance? Mr. President, they have they have a pretty good chance. Yeah.
He's like a high school football coach, man. He's just happy. He's going, go, go, go. It doesn't matter
like
what he's rooting for.
High school football coach who has forgotten that like the other coach just died and this is like a memorial game.
He's like the player's down on the field and he's telling his teammates still run. They haven't blown the whistle yet.
When that one, like 2 seasons ago, when that one Bills player had cardiac arrest on the field, he's that one fan who was still rooting for the Bills to like win the game as they're doing CPR.
He's the one who's mad that they stopped the game. He's like, I thought this was America.
I mean, all he did was almost die. I mean,
come
God.
on, man. No, it's entertaining. It's horrible. He's a horrible person. Obviously, he's a character. He's not a real person, but it's entertaining.
Not a guy you want in the war room.
Right. No. All right. So we're going to get to the end. Our Slim Pickens is going to go down to dislodge this bomb because the doors are stuck. He's straddling the bomb as he's attempting to fix it. The door's open, it's dropped, and Major Khan is riding it down like a horse at a rodeo.
Waving his cowboy hat.
With his cowboy hat, just yeehawing all the way down to the ground. And then nuclear blast.
One thing we should mention before we end our discussion is that the end of the movie, when they realize that they can't stop this plane, like it's not going to happen. They start talking. Dr. Strangelove comes up and he says, we could save the human race by hiding them all in mine shafts.
Right.
And they go, really? Is this viable? And he explains how it could be in a very Nazi-esque sort of way. Like, well, you'd have to take into account political prowess and this and physical
intelligence.
And one man for every 10 women, give or take.
Well, we would not be able to have monogamous relationships.
And suddenly the president and Buck Turkinson are like, hey, this is actually not that bad of an idea.
And he goes, actually, everyone in this room would have to go with us.
And then Turkinson is like, we'll have to do it. We have to do it. I mean, because the Soviets probably have the same idea. And Mr. President, we cannot have a mine shaft gap. Which was the constant, which is really funny if you don't know a lot about Cold War history, is the constant argument for why we need X amount of nukes is because you cannot have a nuclear gap. It doesn't matter if you have enough nukes to destroy the USSR 20 times. If they have enough to destroy you 23 times, you need to have enough to destroy them 24 times. And so that's the joke that he's making there.
The mine shaft gap.
If the Soviets are going to have mine shafts where in 100 years they come out and they take over our mine shafts, then we have to have more mine shafts. We can't have a mine shaft gap.
That's hilarious. I didn't catch that. Good catch there, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah, so suddenly they're all for it, and then we're going to hear We'll Meet Again plays as the Doomsday Machine launches nuke after nuke. And the Russian ambassador is taking pictures of the war room and like their bid maps and everything
as
like that.
If like the world, like they keep doing their Cold War thing as if the world's not about to end.
Right,
because
the conflict is greater than the world ending.
It has blinded them to reality.
Right. Again, man, I love this movie. We needed to talk about it because this is a perfect start to our Cold War double feature.
Yes.
But man, you've got to watch this movie. I really hope you took our advice at the beginning. You watched it before you listened to this because it is just the subtle things, the little extra added pieces that the actors put into this. It's just incredible. I mean, obviously, the screenplay is great. The directing's great, but it's really, in my opinion, the performances that makes it stand out.
And the last line, Mein Führer, I can walk as the world blows.
Oh, man. It's so good. It's so good. All right, man. Let's get to it. 60 seconds. We're going to do our biggest dope, biggest nope of Dr. Strangelove. I did not prepare for this one beforehand. You want to start? You want to start? You want me to start?
I'll start. It's okay.
You'll start? All right, you ready? 60 seconds and go.
Okay. Biggest dope. Definitely just the caricature of all the characters. Like the RAF pilot, the crazy American general, the other crazy American general, the president and the premier trying to act like they don't hate each other. Like, excellent. Top tier. Chef's kiss. Biggest nope. Honestly, I think the plane scenes are not as
Gosh
funny.
dang it, Kyle. That's what I was going to say.
Pick another one.
I should have gone first.
The plane scenes are the biggest nope. They're fine, but they're nothing spectacular.
I think the only thing about the plane scenes is because you know what's going to happen, and they still play it almost like a standard action movie because, like, oh, the plane doesn't have enough gas to get to their original site, so it's like, I don't care. That's not the point of the movie. It does drag a little bit in those scenes. Gosh dang it, that was my nope. What was my biggest dope? You took my biggest dope and my biggest nope. I guess I would go my second would be the screenplay because it's just perfectly written. Biggest nope. I don't know, man. I don't know. That was my only one.
Fluoridation of the water supply. That's its
gosh
biggest
dang
dope.
it. I don't know. Everything else is so freaking good.
I only drink grain alcohol and purified rainwater.
Maybe I guess if I was gonna add something to it, then it would be the only thing I could add is like a couple of the shots. Again, it's of the plane, but it's different. Just look kind of cheap. I mean, it's 60s, man. You can't. I mean, they look good for the time.
Do they? Because I think they didn't look any better than Wings, and Wings was 37 years.
Hold on, but that's because Wings was legitimately shot.
I know, but I've watched the Battle of Britain and which is a 1960s movie. And you could maybe not a B-52. You could have made the plane scenes look more real, Stanley.
They're just it's just a model in front of a green screen, I think.
Yeah,
or not.
Like it's like a rolling screen. Yeah,
yeah. So what they do is they would just take footage and then they just kind of put the model in front of it. I mean, but you can tell. Yeah, I guess that'd be the biggest nope. That was way over a minute. That wasn't even close to a minute. So we definitely failed that one.
And then for me, the craziest thing is always thinking about how 13 years later, 15 years later, you have Star Wars. And so and that's not related to the history at all, but just the special effects, like the fact that 15 years ago, movies for the most part looked very similar to how they do now, special effects wise, give or take a few things like Avatar and Transformers and stuff like that. And 15 years before Star Wars, you have this really schlocky looking B-52 model falling through the air.
Well, Stanley Kubrick's follow up to this, 2001: A Space Odyssey, came out in '68, and man, I tell you what, it's hard to tell what's real and what's not in that. It looks fantastic. So honestly, it could be more attributed to budget, than anything. I'm trying to think of other examples at the time, but all that's coming to mind is like kind of schlocky, alien movies of the time. I'm trying to think of anything else out in space. Nothing's coming to mind for planes or space.
Lost in Space, the TV show, was a thing.
Yeah.
Danger, Will Robinson, Danger.
This looked better than most Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's around the same period.
That's true.
So maybe it was about standard. I don't know. Anyways, our movie guy's lacking on that subject.
I know it'd be cool if he'd do his research.
You'd think he would. I forgot to put down Peter Sellers' name. All right, man. Fantastic movie. Just freaking fantastic movie. What are we talking about next week? God, no, Kyle, hold on. You're supposed to describe it.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Have to bleep it out.
Never mind. So a small but muscular Italian man takes on a Russian dude chiseled from an actual block of iron.
Takes on Russia.
Takes on Russia.
Just takes on Russia.
While Survivor, the rock band, plays in the background.
Okay, but the soundtrack to this movie is banger after banger.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
You could put it on and play it for your whole workout.
Yes.
All right.
Correct.
It's
Survivor
fantastic.
is the most underrated rock band of the '80s. Like that.
I don't know. I've got a
my
few,
hat on it.
but they've got some good ones. Survivor doesn't even have my favorite song off that album, but we'll talk about that next week. We'll get to it.
You like Living in America, don't you?
No, sir. That is a good song, but no, my favorite is Oh, now I can't think of the name of it. All I can think of Hearts on Fire, and that's not my favorite.
The burning heart, just about to burst. That's not the same song, but
it's not. Gosh dang it! So many hearts and fires, and I can't think tonight, man. I can't think. I don't know. For those who have made it to the end, I worked out right before this. I put a lot of blood in my muscles and nothing in my brain. So, I'm trying to fight this dad bod coming on. But yeah, so I hope I don't sound too dumb throughout this.
Not any dumber than you normally do.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. And when I need someone to lift me up, I know you're there.
To just smack you back down. To just kick the ladder down.
All right. Well, we're almost halfway through the season. Almost halfway through season 2. It's going pretty well. I'm happy with it. I hope y'all are enjoying it, and we will get back to you again next week. So until then.
And in the words of one of our favorite characters to say goodbye to you, Mein Führer, I can walk.
Oh, wait, don't cancel us. It's from the movie.
I'm not a Nazi, I promise you.
It's from the movie.
It's from the movie.
I swear.
I love Jewish people.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Peace.